Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Calderon. I am a master's student here at the University of Arizona with my program is public health and my concentration is policy and management. I am also the on-campus Peace Corps recruiter. So for anyone who's heard of it, has questions, or just wants to have a one-on-one, I'm the person that will hopefully answer those questions and kind of go through the application process as well. And so to give you some background on Peace Corps, we have three main goals, and our goal is to help people of interest countries in meeting their needs for trained men and women. And so whatever that is that they need some support or ideas or strategizing plans or anything like that, our hope is that we're able to collaborate with one another, learn from one another, and just be more of like the supportive team. The end goal is to promote a better understanding of Americans on the part of the countries that we are serving and vice versa. So we know that US is a very diverse country in terms of race, politics, our day-to-day life, and everything that goes along, which makes our country so special. And so we want to be able to share that. And there's also a lot of things that we don't know about other countries. And so this is a great experience to also learn about it. So there are only two requirements to apply to Peace Corps, and that is that you have to be a US citizen and at least 18 years of age. That being said, 90+% of our volunteers have at least their bachelor's. And in terms of age, we have from volunteers that go straight out from college or those who go as couples or singles during retirement. And so our age range is between 20 and 86. Before COVID-19, we had over 7,000 volunteers around the world with partnerships with 60 plus countries. And so there were a lot of opportunities, and we're hoping to get back up into those numbers. As of now, this year, we have opened our service back up to 24 countries. Most of the countries are in Latin America or African countries. And so we're hoping that as we kind of get the hang more of how to keep our volunteers and community members safe, that we're able to continue the work that we were doing or perhaps even new projects. We have 6 different concentrations, and that is agriculture, environment, youth and development, health, education, and community economic development. And so as you can see, there's a variety of things that you can do. There's room for everyone, regardless of what your background is, your major is. There's definitely room and space for you to get creative and kind of jump onto projects that other communities are in need. There's also opportunities for you to take on secondary projects. And that can mean, once you are on site, perhaps you connect with someone in the community and they're in need of something, or perhaps there's another Peace Corps volunteer in your area that you can also support. Although you apply for one sector specifically, there's definitely room for you to help out in other ways. The countries highlighted that you see here are the ones that we have previously worked and volunteer and just have a partnership with. As I mentioned, as of now, it's 24 countries that have opened up, and we're hoping that that continues to grow. So a little bit about my background. I was a Peace Corps volunteer from 2018 to 2020. I served in the country of Botswana, and if I'm being quite honest, I myself did not know where Botswana was when I applied. There are a couple of different options that you can go about when you apply. So you can choose a country specific and sort of see what projects are available. Or if there's a sector that you really want to be part of, you can do that and see which countries are available. Or the last option, which is what I did, I was just, I was open to wherever I was needed most. And so Botswana was where I was sent. And it is in the southern region of Africa. So it's borders to South Africa. My assigned area was health. But I also did a couple of different secondary projects that kind of dipped into youth development. The 2 languages spoken in Botswana are Setswana and English. And Setswana, I had to learn it once I was there. So you get 3 months of training, which I'll talk a little bit more about it soon. And that's where sort of a lot of the practice and learning and interaction happen. So integrating in the culture, as I mentioned, there are 3 months that you do training for, and you do those in your country that you'll be serving. And so you're within your cohort, you are in a language class. And the picture that you see here to the left, that is my language group, which we were able to laugh a lot and learned a lot because obviously it's a whole new language for all of us. We had a Setswana teacher, and she was amazing. She made sure that we were ready once we were on site. The picture that you see at the bottom left is cultural dance event that we went to. And so part of our training is, to learn about food and dances and language, as I mentioned, and also very sector specific projects. So although I had some background within public health, there were still a lot of things that I didn't know that were relevant to the community that I would be working with. And so my training really prepared me for that. The other cool thing about the 3-month training is that you are placed with a host family. And so the picture you see on the right is my host family there. I miss them so much. I still talk to them. And you are placed with them just to make sure that you are immersed in the community as much as possible, pretty much 24 hours a day. And they were just such a loving family. So my primary assignment, as I mentioned, I was in the health sector. And so I worked with a community social worker and nurse. And we work with youth who either been impacted by HIV/AIDS in their family or they themselves. And so we created a support group that gave them the opportunity and space to talk about, topics that were relevant to them, like disclosure and medication and adherence and things like that, and dating, especially because they were so young. And so a lot of the work that I did was kind of behind the scenes and just like planning things. But the main leaders and host of all the events were the social work and nurses. They were an amazing group to work with. And in fact, they became such a close-knit group that we ended up applying for a grant in Botswana. So we got approved for like approximately $7,000. And they were kind of on the roll to get their ideas kind of started to become their own NGO. And so they got a lot of training. Unfortunately, that had to be paused because of COVID, but there's definitely still a very close-knit group and they're a great support system for one another. So my secondary assignment, I taught life skill courses from K through 12. And so they were very age specific. And some of the topics were financial literacy, self-esteem, how to, navigate academics and things like that, right? It really helped me to kind of go into more of like the education sector, even though that wasn't mine, but I was able to do that along with like youth development and things like that. So some cool things about the Peace Corps is that you do get benefits during and after your service. So during your service, you are given a living stipend as well as your housing and medical and dental coverage. And if you have student loans, you have the opportunity to defer them while you're doing Peace Corps. And depending on the type of loan that you have, perhaps there's a possibility for cancellation in the future as well, but it's kind of depending on your situation. Additionally, you do get vacation time. And so in my case, I was able to come back to the US for the holidays and I stayed for like approximately 2 weeks. I was able to travel to a lot of like the Southern African countries while, I was in Botswana, so a lot of the neighboring countries. And additionally, you do get career skills and training. As I mentioned, there's a very intense 3 months training and there's a lot of information that kind of gets thrown at you, but then you put it to practice, right? And so you have the ability to really learn it, to really put it to practice and to just be creative with it and connect with the community as well. Safety and health. You do have a medical officer who's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as well as a security officer. The security officer is also in charge of making sure that the house you'll be living in is safe, not just structure-wise, but the neighborhood and what's around. And so they are really there to kind of set the foundation, make sure that you'll be comfortable and safe throughout the 2 years that you'll be there. You also have a community immersion training. And so during those first 3 months, one of the weeks you are sent to your site that you'll be pretty much living and working for the next 2 years. And our hope is that you transition as smooth as possible. And so once you come back after that week with your cohort, if you have any concerns or questions, you're able to talk to your project managers about it. And, if there's any accommodation, I know that there's been situations where perhaps volunteers, because of dietary reasons, might need to be close to a grocery store or might need taxis in their village. And so those are ways that you can, advocate for yourself, but you wouldn't know until you do the community immersion training. And so you kind of get that space to figure out what works best for you. There's also U.S. government support and dedicated victim advocacy for you to also utilize. And for my cohort, we had to be evacuated. And so a lot of the work that was done to make the transition back to the U.S. smoothly was done through the U.S. Embassy. And so that support is there for you to utilize at any point. So benefits after service. We know that 2+ years is a very long time and long commitment. And so you are given a $10,000 transitional fund after you are done with your service. And so our hope is that, that helps you a little bit, whether that's a car that you need or an apartment or loans or go back to school, whatever it is that you might need, that is there for you to use. If you decide to go into graduate school, there is the Coverdell Fellowship. which is pretty much for like scholarship, depending on the school that you go to. You can go from partial tuition reduction to a full ride. And so it depends on the program and school that you're applying for. The U of A has a very generous Coverdell Fellowship. The cool thing about it here as well is that you are also partnered with a local community organization, or if you have a project in mind, you can use that. And so you work for like 10 hours a week. And you also get your stipend as well. And so that's a way to bring back all those skills that you learned during service and to bring it back to your communities as well here in the US. There's a very, very large professional networking and career services as well. And part of it is because we are constantly trying to connect, right, what we learned in Peace Corps and bring it back to the US. And organically, the minute you say you're a return Peace Corps volunteer and you meet another return Peace Corps volunteer, there's always that connection where, you know what you went through, you know the hardships, but also the successes that you go through in service. And for the most part, I would say, if not all the time, return Peace Corps volunteers are always wanting to help one another because you do create like a family kind of environment. If, graduate school is perhaps not what you're thinking of, but you want to go and work right after Peace Corps, there's a federal employment advantage. And so you have 1 year to non-competitive eligibility for federal jobs. And so if that's what you want to go for, you also have that option. And lastly, public service loan forgiveness, as I mentioned, and some slight access to affordable health insurance as well. So if you're an undergrad right now at the University of Arizona, one thing that you can do to prepare for Peace Corps is the Peace Corps Prep Program. So Chris Elsner is our program director or coordinator, and he helps you target your application so that you are a competitive applicant once you are done with undergrad or perhaps your senior year and you're ready to apply. It is a voluntary program. At any point you feel like it doesn't fit your schedule or your goals or something has changed, you can end it at any point. But the certificate itself is useful for different career paths and public service. And so even if Peace Corps is no longer something that you want to do, it's also there for you to add to your resume as well. Once again, my name is Stephanie Calderon. You have my email here on screen, and if you have any questions, I like to tell my students, no pressure at all. I think that it's always good to know what your options are. And Peace Corps is definitely an amazing option to have after college. And so if you're thinking about it, if perhaps you're sure that you want to do it, I'm here to help you review your resume, your application, personal statement. And, when the time comes, perhaps even go through a mock interview to make sure that you're ready to become the best applicant that there is out there for Peace Corps.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you so much. That's really, really great to learn more about Peace Corps and all of the different opportunities and what the program entails. Would you say this is open to all majors?
It is open to all majors. There are some projects that perhaps can be a little bit more specific depending on the need in the community. But I would say that it's for the most part open to the background that you have, as long as you go in with the mindset that this is a public service, that you're there to help. What we want to see is that there's like a lot of interpersonal skills, that you are culturally competent, right? You're able to go into uncomfortable situations and still be respectful and as helpful as you can, and things that you are needed or asked of. In fact, a couple months ago, we had Peace Corps for, what was the title? Peace Corps for those who are artistic or creative, something like that. And, I think that we need more of that, right? Because for the most part, we see a lot of people with health background, which is required, I guess, for a lot of our projects, but we want to see different mindsets. We want to see people approach and tackle issues in different ways, right? And so in the past, we've seen art, be one way, or sports. So it's definitely there for everyone who's wanting to go abroad and wanting to help out and immerse in a community.
For someone, or for a Wildcat, let's say a student at the University of Arizona interested in learning more or taking the next step about Peace Corps, what would that be? What is the next step?
Depending sort of where they are, whether they're a freshman or junior, senior, it might look a little bit different. But if this is sort of a new idea that you have in mind, I would recommend first talk to another return Peace Corps volunteer, preferably someone who has your background, right? So if you are in some sort of history background or social work, connecting with a Coverdell fellow who's done it and sort of see the steps that they've needed. Secondly, I would recommend to really start looking at volunteer opportunities in your community if you haven't already, because that will definitely kind of set your foot forward to applying to Peace Corps and making you a competitive applicant. And for all those things, like both myself and Chris are here to help you out and connect you to the right people or the right direction.
What would you say are some myths, about Peace Corps? Is there one or a couple you can think of?
Oh, there are definitely many. The two that come to mind right now, for some reason, we are associated with like being connected to the military somehow, and probably because of our name, I don't know, but we're not. We're quite the opposite. We're really wanting to immerse and sort of be just like helpers and supporters. Obviously, Peace Corps is a very large federal organization from the US. And so some of the myths that I hear is, there's a complexity of like white savior or going and telling people, what to do, right? And it's quite the opposite. Our goal is to represent the diversity that there is in the US and the whole sense of the word, right? Whether it's race, age, or whatever it might be. So we're wanting to make sure that we kind of represent Peace Corps as what the US is.
That's beautiful. And when it comes to your own realizations, you mentioned that you went to Botswana and it was wonderful, it was awesome. Or in general, what was one thing or a couple that you learned?
I guess like through a professional lens and a personal lens, there are a couple of different ones. Through a personal lens, so I'm Latina and I'm very proud to be Latina, but when I went to Botswana, I was perceived as white. And so through a personal lens, having to explain, my heritage and where my family came from, I think was very interesting because I've never had to experience that. I've never had to tell anyone in the US that I'm not white, right? It kind of made me more proud and more educated and secure of who I am, in terms of my ethnicity, right? And being able to explain it versus before, because it was so common sense, I never had to think about, sort of my lineage and how to explain where my family comes from, right? In terms of a professional, I always had this mentality, like I need to have all these degrees and kind of be super prepared and have all this knowledge to help out. But once I was in my village, I realized that all you have to want is to help, right? And then jump at it, right? I think many times, especially as students, and I remember in my undergrad years, I thought I needed to know so much to help. But in reality, you just kind of have to put yourself in the space and want to learn and to help.
How did you discover Peace Corps? When you were at the university in your undergrad, at what point did you discover it and you thought, oh, I should give this a try? What was that process like, or how did you discover it?
Somebody else like me, a recruiter, came to campus, gave a presentation. And I think I always knew that I wanted to do something out of sort of the ordinary, right? Like I didn't just want to graduate and go to a Monday through Friday job. Like I wanted more. I felt like Peace Corps definitely gave me that opportunity. And then also the benefits, right? Like we're young, like we're trying to create our future to be as successful as possible. And I felt like this was the way to do it, not only because, I was able to learn from other cultures, to practice what I learned in my classes and to learn as well within my projects, but also after, right? And as I mentioned, the networking that sort of occurs after you're done is insane. Like I did not realize how many Peace Corps volunteers there are or return Peace Corps volunteers. And in fact, a couple of weeks back for the book fest, we had a lot of return Peace Corps volunteers from the 60s and 70s and hearing their stories. And there's like this automatic connection that I just like, I at the time I didn't know that I was going to get, but I knew that it was definitely like a great opportunity to have. And it's a lifelong opportunity that kind of carries with you.
Prior to your Peace Corps experience, would you say that you had experienced something similar as part of your Wildcat journey? Would you say that the Peace Corps kind of thing supplemented like your overall background?
So I studied abroad for like a month and I was traveling like Southeastern Asian countries. I just feel like when you do it, although studying abroad is a great opportunity, I'm not discouraging anyone to do it. You're still kind of an outsider, right? You still know that in a short amount of time, you're going to come back versus Peace Corps, you live there. Like you eat there, you have to plan 2 years of your life there, you spend holidays there. I think that's kind of like the biggest difference. That being said, just going abroad definitely prepare me, but in the bigger picture, I would say that you kind of learn everything once you are in Peace Corps. So my office is located on Basque, the third floor. Just ask where Peace Corps is because it's one of the cubicles. And my email is scalderons1@email.arizona.edu.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Appreciate it.
Thank you.